Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, the 2022 county executive race is shaping up already. How best to promote job growth in Montgomery County. Governor Hogan speaks out against Asian discrimination. And should DC be a state, or should it be given back to Maryland? Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by attorney Ron Little and former membership director for the Maryland GOP, Phil Bell. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. A week after a string of massage parlors were attacked in the Atlanta, Georgia area, resulting in the death of 8 people, including 6 Asian women, Governor Hogan and his wife, Yumi, a South Korean native, toured several Asian-owned businesses in the Baltimore area to demonstrate their solidarity with the Asian community. Earlier in the same week, the governor had forcefully denounced the rising violence and attacks experienced by the Asian community and denounced such attacks vehemently. Ron, incidents involving Asians are considered relatively underreported. And the tragedy in Atlanta raised the question of why is discrimination and attacks against Asians increasing? Now, here in Montgomery County last year, there were 117 hate bias incidents reports filed with police, but only 10 of them were considered anti-Asian. So is there evidence that such attacks have increased over the past year, or is it a perception that we are all feeling?
Well, I don't think we have enough time to have gleaned information about actual data, which is hampered by the fact that most of these incidents aren't being reported. I think historically, this country, as it learns to integrate and to deal with the fabric of all of the nationalities in this country, have made it difficult for people to reach out to the police to get support and to find the source of protection that they need. The Asian American and Pacific Islander community in this country, since the Chinese Exclusion Act and God knows what else, has always felt ostracized. And I think that it didn't help that the Chinese and Asian Pacific community had a target put on their back by former President Trump. I mean, we saw the same sort of spikes when he called out the Mexican community, and we saw the same kind of response the way he chose to deal with the riots around George Floyd. So the leadership really does set the example, and I think those who feel threatened are going to seek out those who are called up by leadership as the source of the problem. And that's fundamentally what our problem is.
But I mean, not all of the incidents, at least that we've seen video evidence of, are the result of, I would say, could be attributed to the leadership not speaking. Some of these are just criminal acts that occur when someone is walking down the street. How do you explain that?
Well, because we've made it clear to certain segments of the population that it's okay to attack minority communities. Whether there's a proximate time between the speech and the event remains to be seen. But I think when we make it clear from the top of our chain that it's okay to ostracize and to alienate people, people choose to act whenever they want to. So now it's okay to attack the Asian American community. Before it was okay to attack the Mexican community. We really need to focus on making sure that we have an understanding and a respect of one another despite our differences in this country. And when our president is not preaching that kind of rhetoric, we run the risk of having the problems that we have now. And the attacks on the Asian American community won't stop until we find another target.
Well, I don't know if I agree on that last part there, But Phil, both the state and Montgomery County officials came out very strongly in support of the Asian community and against violence towards the Asian community. You know, and I think Ron's struggling with what else can be done, as I am struggling with what else can be done. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, Casey, since you said the magic word, we're going to have to make sure I speak authoritatively here. Now, I refuse to engage in any more hand-wringing about race. I'm just simply not going to do it. There is no spike in attacks on Asians or otherwise. It's simply, as you said, Casey, it's crime. It's random crime. It happens. There are bad people of all races, all backgrounds, all genders, you name it. Bad things happen. It's unfortunate. What happened in Atlanta is very sad. But as the news came out almost immediately, what happened there? You had a situation where someone that had disorders, dysfunction related to sex, decided to commit horrible crimes because of that. And then the media and our leaders, unfortunately, came out immediately and decided to cast this as a crime against Asians. I am tired of us as Americans looking at each other as just a hodgepodge of victim groups. It has to end, and now is the time for that to start.
Well, Ron, I'll let you respond very quickly because we have to move on to our next topic.
Well, you know, I think the fact that we want to not address the problem is the problem. We can't say that this hodgepodge is just randomly victimized.
You can't even identify it yourself.
No one can identify the source of the problem except to say that we've had a history in this country of alienating specific groups based on race, gender, or ethnic origin. And you cannot say to me that this person, in an attempt to dismiss it for what it was, had a sexual, issue that he chose to take out on,
a sexual issue.
Families.
Did it go down when President Trump appointed Elaine Chao as the transportation secretary? Very prominent.
So that means that he gets a pass. Calling out China and calling it the China virus and accusing Chinese Americans of being responsible for the spike we had in COVID. He gets a pass because yes, he did do that. That, if you don't want to acknowledge that, is representative of another issue. That's beside the point. Appointing Elaine Chao does not give him a pass for what he did while he was president of the United States. And the things that he said about the Asian community are reprehensible.
No.
What did he say about? What did he say negative about? I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you off here because I don't like doing that, but I want to talk about DC statehood and whether or not DC statehood, which is very much in the news today because it was a campaign pledge of President Biden, whether or not this is a good idea. And Phil, I'm going to start with you. Should it be granted statehood?
No, it shouldn't. And frankly, if you think about it, there's one thing that's interesting here. You have the freedom to live anywhere you want in this country, anywhere, but there are people who choose to live in DC. And they've known since the creation of DC that there were different rules that went along with voting and the like there. A lot of things have changed in terms of self-government, government, and the like. If the people there say, gee, I really need my franchise to count in different ways, they're welcome to move to Maryland, to Virginia, to Wisconsin, Missouri, you name it. DC should stay as it is.
And Ron, we only have a couple of minutes left here on this, but there's not, in addition to the idea that DC should or shouldn't get statehood, one of the ideas is to give it back to Maryland, that we carve out an area, a federal city around the Capitol and the White House, and give the remainder of the 73 acres back to the state of Maryland, just like 30 acres was given back to Virginia in the 1800s.
If the federal government wanted to do that, they would have done that a long time ago. I don't think we can dismiss the problem by saying if those people wanted their votes to count, they would live someplace where votes are already being counted. I don't see a problem with having DC being given statehood. They have representation in a manner of speaking, but they're paying taxes just like the rest of us. And I don't know if it hurts me as a Marylander to have DC finally become a state. I think it's long past due for it to be done, and I think it's a fantastic idea.
Well, having grown up in the District of Columbia, when we had commissioners and not even an elected mayor, um, uh, which didn't occur until Walter Washington was elected in the 70s after he had been appointed mayor by Lyndon Johnson. Um, I'm torn by this topic because I felt there was a lack of representation during my life, and I chose to move partly for that reason, is that I wanted to be able to vote somewhere else. One final thought is that one way to alleviate this problem is to make the District of Columbia like Hong Kong. Make it an independent city that has no federal taxation, and to free the citizens of having to pay federal taxes as a means of evening up the lack of representation. When we come back from this short break, because we have to leave, we can't even trash talk the Maryland state song, which is Maryland, My Maryland, which has gone to the dustbin of history. So when we come back from this short break, how is it best to promote job growth here in Montgomery County? And the 2022 race for county executive already has a crowded field. Stay tuned. And welcome back. And I want to start out by saying this is a complicated story because there's a lot of different divergent thoughts here. But on March 12th, County Executive Mark Elrich announced that the county was seeking a developing partner to build a life science and technology campus in the White Flint area. This week, the County Council approved a $50 million housing initiative fund to support the construction of 900 affordable new housing units a year. Now, Ron, a week after the county executive made his announcement, Adam Pugnuccio, writing in the watchdog website 7th State, pointed out that 3 days earlier at a forum held by the Housing Association of Nonprofit Developers, that the county executive said the following: "Part of me wonders whether we ought to be looking at partnering with developers," and further speculated that the county should act as its own developer. Now, we've had a problem developing economic development here in Montgomery County, so are these mixed signals helpful?
No, they're not. I mean, we need to figure out a way to effectively utilize that footprint. And I think we need to rely on the information and capability of those professionals who are best suited to do that. So whether we want to lean on developers 75% or 50% is not the issue. They need to be part of the process, and we need to do something that's going to be beneficial, not just to the community immediately around it, but to the entire county and to the entire state. You know, if that property continues to go unused, it's just wasteful, and taxpayers are bearing the burden of that.
Well, I think that's a great segue because Adam wrote a piece in December of 2020 that was an analysis of the previously failed development plans around White Flint. And one of the salient points that it pointed out was that the developers thought it was a great plan. They were all in on doing the development, but they had a problem finding financing, mainly because of a lack of job creation. So, Phil, does the county not understand how jobs are created?
Well, it doesn't, but that isn't just specifically to Montgomery County. That's every county, because these entities in government, their job and their core competency is simply not doing this. The governments are good at taking money from people, and that's about it. And they're not even really good at giving it to other people. They're just good at taking it. So that's why, and everything that we've talked about here shows why a free market approach where the county steps away and whoever says, hey, you know what, this land would be good for X, this land would be good for Y, let's do this, let's do that. That's the approach. That's what got the development in general happening in the first place, and why in general things tend to work. But this
here's one of the scary statistics that was in the December piece. that private sector job growth in Montgomery County over the last 15 years is a negative 1%. That
Right.
means we're not producing the jobs to support a vibrant community.
Well, but look at everything that we've discussed here, whether it's affordable housing or developing the White Flint, it's all been predicated on one thing: what the county, whether it's the county council and the staff and the county executive want. That's just not a winning message, a winning strategy.
Well, I was, Ron, I was shocked when in the one article where County Executive Mark Elrich is suggesting that just because he renovated some houses, he knew how to do development and construction projects, as if the magnitude is no difference. What's going on here?
I think it's a reprioritization problem. The White Flint area has been on decline long before its eventual close. And the fact that we did not have a plan in place, recognizing as these stores were pulling out that we needed to do something that was going to be a positive impact on our overall fiscal health, and B, a constant source of jobs and opportunities for people who needed them, speaks to what we're maybe not focused on that we should be. The White Flint area is a fantastic hub. It's got great metro access. It's along a main route. It should be a shining star for someone looking to develop, and why they're not looking here, I can't answer that question.
Well, if you can look over my bald head, you can see a big building in the background. That is the marketplace at North Bethesda, which is in White Flint. I mean, I've been in this submarket for the past 20 years, and I think it's a wonderful place to do business and have run my business. But all of this sort of coalesces into what our next topic is going to be, and that's about the upcoming elections in 2022. And even though they're more than a year away, 3 possible challengers for the county executive have emerged. David Blair, who was defeated in the last election, has announced his candidacy this week, as has County Executive Mark Elrich announced his candidacy. But we also have possible council members who are term limited, who are thinking of running. Hans Reimer, Tom Hucker, Nancy Navarro, Craig Rice. There is a cast of characters who are thinking about challenging Mr. Elrich. Phil, are we going to have too many candidates running, and so Mr. Elrich is going to win again?
I'm not quite convinced that it's going to get there, because the one thing that I've seen over the years is that even though you do have a lot of people who are term limited, and obviously the term limits are relatively new, you do have these kind of very close informal networks between a lot of these folks, so they will find some way to do something else, I think, in order to preserve Mark Elrich in that seat, because like it or not, no matter how incompetent he appears to be, he does also appear to have a lot of support from the Democrat base in the county. So I just don't see that changing.
Well, Ron, I want to follow up with you a little bit about the power of the incumbency, because there are great statistics that show that even if an incumbent may appear weak on paper, that they have great power to be reelected. So is that at play here as well?
No, I don't think so this time. I think that the vast majority of the public is going to reflect on how we managed during this crisis, and whether or not a change in leadership would be a positive thing for the county. I think Mr. Elrich and whomever else is in on the race needs to be able to speak to the plans they have for the county going forward in terms of job growth, recovery from the pandemic, and whether it's not just the economy, but our environment and the purple line and everything else that's thrown into the mix here. 77 votes is not a lot. And in a smaller field, it could swing the other way.
Well, it'll be real interesting, because as we know, the Democratic primary is where the action will all take place. Mm-hmm. And it'll be interesting to see when you have politicians who think they have a solidified base, that they can move up. And as we saw in the last election, Mark Elrich's base of Silver Spring and Tacoma Park and the progressives there won the day. So we're going to have to see how that all plays out. I think Mr. Elrich has grown into the job a great deal, but I still think there's a lot of inconsistencies that people can point out to that is going to come into play during the election. So stay tuned for parting shots when we come back from the short break. Welcome back. Now with parting shots, Phil Bell.
Thank you, Casey. My parting shot goes to my favorite whipping boy, Anthony Fauci. We have now gone beyond a year since he, with his complete incompetence, disrupted every facet of our daily lives. And what's worse about it is it's not just, not being able to go see baseball games and whatnot. It's the personal interactions that we're missing. And what has he done in this year? He's managed to go to a baseball game when most of us couldn't. He's managed to be on the cover of all of these People magazines and the like as some great shaman of pharmaceuticals. But the one thing he hasn't done is gotten consistent what's going on with COVID-19. He doesn't know anything, but the country is still blindly following him, and it's time for it to stop.
Thank you, Phil. Ron Little, your parting shot.
Well, I like to go and acknowledge the hard work of those who have been suffering on the front lines, and those are our frontline workers. I've had opportunity to speak with and see firsthand the hard work that's going into getting everyone vaccinated. These people are selfless in their efforts, and they make every effort to make people comfortable with the process and to get people in and out as quickly as possible. Right now, that's the best thing that we can do for everyone. Saying that it's going to go away on its own, clearly not the answer. Getting everyone vaccinated and doing it in the most expeditious and organized way possible is the best course of action. And from what I can see right now, it's all on that target.
Well, I want to thank you, Ron, and thank you, Phil. Again, I'm a firsthand participant in this process because I was vaccinated 2 weeks ago. And for 2 months prior to that, I tried every day to get eligible and to sign up for the vaccine. It is getting better, but we got to be patient for it. I want to thank you for being here today. I want to thank the audience for tuning in each and every week to Montgomery County's hardest hitting political talk show. For 21 this week, I'm Casey Aiken.